Decoded.
Welcome to Book Decoded, where we unpack the most fascinating insights from just one incredible read. Today, we're getting into Pria Anand's The Mind Electric. Honestly, this book might just change how you think about, your own brain. It digs into the really astonishing ways our minds build stories, even when reality itself feels a bit shaky. And we start with something brilliant, a personal story from the author's own family. You got to hear this. Her grandfather, picture this, 1945, India. He somehow talks his way onto a naval transport ship heading to the U.S. total adventurer, lands in L.A., studies cinema for 3 years, and get this, even manages to get a photo taken with Cary Grant. And that story, that photo, that became his masterpiece anecdote. He used it to woo his future wife. A week later, engaged. It's just such a perfect human way to introduce the book's big idea. Our brains are story machines, deeply wired for narrative.
Exactly. And what Anand does so well is bridge that charming, maybe slightly polished family story to a really deep scientific concept, confabulation. And it's crucial to understand this isn't about deliberate lying. That's what people often think. No, it's the brain's unconscious process. It genuinely believes these vivid but false memories it creates to fill in gaps. Gaps from injury, infection, dementia, strokes. It's like a mental patch job when the real data is missing. The book calls it an almost inevitable response of wounded brains.
Yeah.
A profound way to cope.
That phrase, wounded brains, is striking. But it makes you think, if the brain does this under duress, does the mind electric suggest that maybe even healthy brains are doing a bit of this? Confabulating.
Yeah.
All the time, just, smoothing things over, making our everyday reality make sense. Are we all doing it on some level?
I think that's absolutely one of the core arguments. The book really pushes this idea that our brains are, maybe prodigious fabulists is the term used, constantly weaving stories, not just when something's wrong, but as a fundamental way of constructing reality, period, for survival, for understanding. Think about the basic mechanics Santiago Ramon y Cajal, back in the 19th century, first mapping the neurons. He showed us the intricate dance, the physical basis for how these thoughts, these narratives actually form. He literally drew the brain's storytelling machinery.
Okay, so we've got the basic storytelling function, maybe even in healthy brains, but then the book goes into some really strange territory, like alien hands. That sounds completely wild. Tell us about that.
It is wild. Alien hand syndrome. It's a rare neurological thing where typically one hand just seems to act entirely on its own, completely outside the person's conscious control. Imagine your hand unbuttoning your shirt or grabbing something and you didn't tell it to. You're just watching it happen.
Whoa.
Right. And the Mind Electric uses this to show how the brain, faced with this total breakdown of control, scrambles to create a story. It needs an explanation, so it might invent narratives about the hand being possessed or having its own personality. Anything to make this bizarre reality somehow coherent. It's such a stark example of that relentless drive for narrative.
Makes you want to keep an eye on your own hands, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And sticking with the brain's narrative power, the book also touches on how culture shapes experiences, like hearing voices. That was fascinating.
Yes, absolutely fascinating. Anand points out this really interesting contrast. In the U.S., for instance, patients diagnosed with schizophrenia often report hearing violent or disturbing voices. It's generally seen as purely pathological. But then you look at somewhere like Ghana, and individuals might report hearing voices too, but interpret them very differently, maybe as guiding voices, God, ancestors. They might see them as a source of wisdom, not necessarily illness. The cultural narrative profoundly shapes the brain's story about the experience itself.
That is quite a thought, that our reality, our truth, isn't just our brain, but our brain steeped in culture, so deeply constructed. So as we wrap up this look into the mind electric, maybe the question for you listening is, what stories are your brains weaving right now just to navigate your day, your world? And what could we all learn if we paid a bit more attention to those internal narratives? Thanks for joining us on Book Decoded.